Recording is in progress.
All right, so thank you very much, Andrew. And we are now on week 91 of our Indigenous Global Unity Summit event. We have a scheduled guest speaker of Mark Dais. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But as we do each week during these events, I do like to start with the land acknowledgement as our very first step moving forward. So we begin today by acknowledging that we walk upon the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples. We recognize their history, spirituality, culture, and stewardship of the land. We're grateful to all Indigenous groups for their commitment to protect the land and its resources. We're committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. We acknowledge the land we're meeting on here in the Greater Toronto Area is the traditional territory of many nations on the land known as Kanlekhea, Tikaranto, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples, and is now home to many diverse peoples. We'd also like to acknowledge the land we're on here as a meeting place of two treaties, the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and those of the First Nations, the Williams Treaty. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 and is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. We also acknowledge the Two-Row Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Six Nations of Tikaranto watershed and the settlers, an agreement that bound them to work together and develop their societies in parallel on these shared lands. In our role as settlers and displaced people on this land, we share the responsibility of challenging and disrupting colonial systems that enact violence upon the land and stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. We'd like to thank the Indigenous peoples of these lands, including First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, for sharing this land with us. And we acknowledge and recognize all of the world's Indigenous people as stewards of Mother Earth. So I do like to also say Sawubona, which means I see you, I see myself in you, I see your hopes, your dreams, and your struggles. I see your ancestors as well, because interconnectedness does not end with two people who are greeting each other. It extends to include the ancestors. All things in Mother Nature are interconnected. There is no sense of being separate. I see myself in all beings, and therefore, if I harm other beings or Mother Nature, translates into harming myself. So today is Thursday, March 2nd, 2023, week 91 of our IGU Summit series, the 9th of our IGU Summit events for 2023. Our guest speaker today is intended to be Mark Dais from Kenya. He's from an organization called Unity Initiative for Refugees, which has its address in the Kakuma refugee camp in Kenya. So the presentation title for today, Change the Youth, Change the World, featuring the work of the youth in Kakuma refugee camp, again, in Kenya. So I will provide a link for people to get more information about the Kakuma refugee camp and this initiative and their areas of operation. That you can find that information on their website as well as the Facebook page. I believe the website is not operational at this point for the organization Unity Initiative for Refugees. Our special guest speaker gave me that link, but I tried it yesterday. It seemed to be working, but I will provide it in the chat for those who wish to try to visit in the future. I do want to start again with an introduction of who I am and who we are, what we do as well. So my name is Lloyd Halferty, co-founder of UnityNet International, also known as Uni, a hybrid holistic practical learning management system company based in Canada that assists with community partnership building globally by leveraging a unique set of community engagement activities developed in partnership with the members of the AHIABGA. I'm also the Chief Ecosystem Director, Program Development Director, and Sustainable Society Consultant for AHIABGA University, which is headquartered in Manhattan, USA. I'm located in the city of Markham in the Don River watershed, German Mills Creek subwatershed draining into Lake Ontario, which is the lowest and last of the North American Great Lakes in the Great Lakes Basin of the Greater Toronto bioregion in southern Ontario, Canada, North America, here on Turtle Island. Where AHIABGA University is a private 501(c)(3) nonprofit company in New York, a member of the UN Global Compact, a UN academic impact member and partner. We're a virtual university created to help empower global populations reestablish a sustainable balance with their local environments. We do this by designing and implementing projects that support strong and diversified local economies while integrating core sustainable technologies and infrastructure into these local communities in the areas of renewable energy, high-density food growth solutions, and systems for sustainably managing local waste streams and protecting local water resources. We're supported by over 375 companies whose products and technologies we employ. AHIABGA University also supports local education and training in the construction, deployment, and maintenance of all of the various integrated solutions for achieving closed-loop systems that in turn support self-sufficient, sustainable communities. Today, I'd like to go into a little more detail as we begin to assist with projects in local communities, including here in the city of Markham, but anywhere in the world where people might wish to do them. I want to remind our audience that AHIABGA University is a charitable organization, a 501(c)(3) nonprofit in the US. We do not and legally cannot profit from our projects, aside from covering the costs of operating and hiring the people we need to create the projects with the project partners we hire. So we're not looking to compensate anyone for land or an opportunity to help them create a community project that in the end they will own. We can help to provide the facility construction support and of course the education and training expertise, along with the project development support that will allow your community members and your local entrepreneurs to create the solutions required, whether it's in Canada, in the US, in Africa, or anywhere else in the world. We do not, however, intend to pay for that opportunity. We can also help our partners find money for your local projects if you're willing to put up the land and find some of the financing on your end as well. As of this moment, we know of no other organizations or efforts other than some international agencies like the World Bank that we're aware of that will come in and gift such an effort or to a school or community or country or outright through private sector initiatives. We do know of UN financing that goes through governments. Of course, this top-down tends to be corrupted in many ways. There needs to be buy-in, however, from the partner and the organization we work with. There needs to be material participation for any philanthropic entities to contribute to completing the funding and implementing any local projects. This is particularly true if the project is designed for a school or other private organization and is not direct funding to a government of your country. So our work includes partnership with the UNDP. We're getting the participation of the country directly. We are also able to look for matching funding in the US, where AHIABGA University is incorporated, especially from groups who are interested in supporting the projects. But if these entities don't see material buy-in from the partners in places like Africa or Indigenous communities, they will have no interest in funding the efforts. So the mindset is that if the partner isn't willing to contribute to the local solution, they must not be committed to the project. So everyone we work with puts up the land because after all, they will own the projects when they are completed. So we do not and will not pay our partners for something that our partners will ultimately own themselves. So we're here to help provide all the project direction and implementation expertise for these projects. We are committed to seeing them done all over the world, but we need partners who are at least equally committed to the success of these local projects in their own local communities. So the benefit of the AHIABGA University programs is that any community that builds them will have a local training center that will regularly graduate the next generation of high-tech farmers. And we will also extend our efforts into retraining farmers throughout the community and even throughout the country where these projects are built. So the key is community involvement, which may include a combination of local organizations, schools, government agencies, and which is actually one of the main reasons why UnityNet is building our empowerment networks globally, or as we say, locally. So again, in the chat, you'll find my contact information, as well as a little bit more information about the 2030 agenda and how Canada is taking that role as well. And there's a link to the Energon University website that finds the methodology for our education and training. In addition, I am putting some information about the Science for Peace Climate Smart Food Consulting Group Network and the Consulting Group Organization. One thing you will notice today in my profile is that I have added a new LinkedIn page, which is not just the group. We now have a UnityNet International web LinkedIn group or LinkedIn page, which describes the organization in more detail. Also, you will find additional information about the COSWAG group of Science for Peace, which is actually where much of this conversation started back many years ago, in, I believe, around 2015. So we do have our Living Re-calendar. I have updated it, but I did not update the calendar this month in this presentation. So the calendar that I have offline that I used to produce this graphic has been updated. There are some additional events on that calendar. Didn't get a chance, unfortunately, to update it. So as I talk about events coming up, I do show this calendar. We call it our Living Re-calendar from UnityNet. I have been using this as well for our Drawdown Markham and UnityNet GTA plans for 2023, revolving around the 5 key community engagement events in April and now also in May, June, October, or August and October. With the first being UNDRIP Day on Earth Day, Saturday, April 22nd. This has already been published on Eventbrite. The next event, I'm working right now with our colleague Leslie from the Biodiversity Network. World Biodiversity Day, which is Sunday, May 22nd. This is new. We have never done this before, but you can see it in the calendar in the middle in bright green. And then that is followed by our Abraham Project Tree Planting Day on Monday, June 5th, World Environment Day. That as well is also in process. We should publish that hopefully soon. I will, as noted earlier today, be having a conversation with Dr. Jose Echeverry at York University, who I hope will agree that we can do that tree planting event at one of those project sites that they have lined up, potentially at the Downs View Park, where they have their education and training center, which is a former military base in Toronto, in North York. So that might be, I hope, published by this weekend, possibly even by today or tomorrow. That event on World Environment Day is followed by the International Youth Day on Saturday, August 12th, where we do our globally coordinated Bubble Fun festivals during our UnityNet Community Unity Weeks. This is followed by the Youth Peace Weeks in October on Global Cooperation Day, which is Wednesday, October 4th, 2023, the date of our Unity Ubuntu Summit, which also launches Youth Peace Weeks, but is also the Global Climate Smart Youth Forum, which is our primary hybrid learning week programs taking place until Monday, October 16th, which is World Food Day. So also notice that I did add Somos Avalon Maya, and thank you, Mitch, for doing these events and broadcasting them every Sunday. This is a spiritual event that takes place with the Maya in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, every Sunday at 11:11 a.m. Eastern Time. So the events are shown in pink on the calendar. As Mitch Gold has said to me earlier this month, we're looking at how to connect the two energies of the eagle and the condor. One last thing that I wanted to mention is that on Tuesday, January 17th, as you see in our calendar in orange, from January, we had our first Drawdown Markham virtual event. At that event, we discussed establishing PodNet GTA Enterprise Network. We'll also support 25 INAP collaboratives that we'd like to create here in the Greater Toronto area. In the past weeks, I've also mentioned here in Markham, in the Greater Toronto area, we'll be doing everything through those INAP collaboratives, including demonstrating regenerative gardens, forests, farms, buildings and kitchens, and also regenerative finance. And of course, we'll be empowering our humanitarian entrepreneurs who are localizing the global goals in each of our own local communities. So please join us wherever you are in the world. This is the essence of the Global Unity Network, our network of networks, as we've called it, which consists of the local and localized multi-stakeholder partnerships, the interfaith neighborhood, academic and business collaboratives, who are changing the paradigm of development globally, one local community at a time. As I also mentioned for the past few weeks, there are other things to consider because the FAO did come out with their newsletter in January. Noted that the 2023 is the International Year of Millets, so this is something to consider as we move forward. So COP15 was also mentioned, especially adoption of the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And I mentioned the new biodiversity event that we'd like to do. So this is important because this has also established a set of global biodiversity goals. So these are brand new, just from this past December, from that big biodiversity meeting in Montreal. So the new set of goals should be what we are truly supporting, and not only those global goals or the SDGs. So the global biodiversity goals need to be translated into national goals in each country, considering each country's circumstances and priorities. I'll be putting details into the chat. Also important in the 2023 SDGs, or is the SDG 2023 Summit at the high-level political forum on sustainable development under the auspices of the General Assembly, convened on September 19th and 20th, 2023. So during the UN General Assembly High-Level Week, this is where heads of states and of governments gather at the United Nations headquarters in New York with follow-up and review of the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and those 17 SDGs. So this has also been added to the calendar. I'm hopeful that we will have some presence at that event, possibly in collaboration with our partners in Manhattan, such as Energon University and We the World, Bill and Rick. So again, we are hoping that I've had a conversation just this past week with our colleague Leslie from Sierra Club of Canada. She's very interested in hosting that event in May, and working together with the Ontario Environment Network and the Canadian Environment Network as well to bring in additional partners so we can do even more pilot projects, these proof of concepts across Ontario, across Canada, with these Indigenous communities, with the environmental communities across the country, as well as to really highlight the fact that the biodiversity goals are actually really one of the most important parts of the Sustainable Development Agenda, and we're already in early discussions about this concept we have of these regenerative development goals post 2030, where we can hopefully now merge those biodiversity goals with the sustainable development goals and come up with a concept that can be brought to the UN regarding this new set of goals, which we're hoping that we can now work with that graphic that's behind Mitch on his screen, where we are integrating so many more of these concepts of how we can move forward in a more holistic way. So again, in the chat, you'll find information about the 2023 SDG Summit, as well as information from the FAO newsletter. Oops. And importantly, around the IPCC and the International Plant Protection Convention, and the recent secretarial meeting that took place between officials in Ottawa and Washington. The Women Farmers Empowerment Farmer Business School that's been set up as well by the FAO and our own Women in Feminist Network, along with some additional information about agricultural plastics, which are one of those things that we don't really seem to be aware of. The amount of plastics used in agriculture in the traditional ways is actually massive and very polluting of our soils. So people have probably heard of microplastics and their effects. It's now microplastics found in almost all women's breast milk on the planet, and all soils, and all, of course, all fish. These are disruptors of our endocrine systems. So as we move forward with our legacy projects here in Markham, we have already begun to have local conversation with the 7th Generation Initiative, especially with Brian Popa, but now also Dr. Jose Echeverry, who's leader of the 7th Generation GTB team here in Markham. So we hope that we can meet with the founder, Susan Bosak, and Charles Hopkins, as well, the UNESCO chair in reorienting education towards sustainability, who is also at York University. So we'd like to meet with them in the near future as well, once we begin conversation with Dr. Echeverry. And as noted before, we hope to also soon have a conversation with the founders and leaders of the Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security. So you'll find again information in the chat, links to the 7th Generation Initiative and the 7th Generation GTB Projects team, which we now have our own working group with Dr. Jose Echeverry. So you'll find information this week about Dr. Echeverry, who is a faculty fellow in the Faculty of Environment and Urban Change at the Delilah Institute for Global Health Research. And you'll find as well some additional information about their projects and partnerships, as well as the original Sustainable Energy Initiative and the Renewable Energy Academy, again, both housed at York University. Some additional information about the UNESCO chair in reorienting education towards sustainability, shareholder being Charles Hopkins at York University. And then you'll also find information about the School of the Arts, Media, Performance, and Design at York U, which of course we are also hoping to partner with as we move forward with our cultural programs. There's also here in Markham, Seneca College, and their faculties and schools, including the Faculty of Applied Arts and Health, Science, Engineering, Arts, Communication, Art and Technology and Design, the Business School, and the location of the Markham campus at 8 Seneca Way, which is literally probably about 25 minutes walking from my home. There's also a link to the Canadian Sports Institute, Ontario Multi-Sports Park, along with a link to Councillor Jim Jones, who has a proposal to establish a Markham Center, Pan Am Center, in collaboration with the Canadian Sports Institute of Ontario, which will be a what he calls a major multi-purpose sporting facility, which has been endorsed as well by the Canadian Sport Institute of Ontario. And this is where we're hoping that we can work with Jim Jones, not just with the implementation of the vertical gardens in the east-west corridor of the transit system for the 407 transitway, but also potentially creating a massive pod building at the site of that new sports facility. So again, you'll find information and links for Susan P. Posak, as well as the Maple Leaf Center for Action on Food Security. As I had indicated earlier, we'd like to partner with as well. So again, today, Thursday, March 2nd, I'm still showing the calendar on the screen. Today's not a special day in the UN calendar, but next week, from Monday to Friday, March 6th to 10th, 2023, is SDG Week Canada, which is hosted by SDSN Canada at the University of Waterloo. Tomorrow, March 3rd, is World Wildlife Day. It's actually the 50th anniversary of the first signing of CITES, the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species in Wild Fauna and Flora, which was signed in 1973, so 50 years ago. So coming up later this month is also Earth Hour at 8:30 p.m. in all time zones on Saturday, March 25th, 2023, which is also the date of the Earth Show on the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. With that followed by Wednesday, March 8th, one day before our next IGA Summit, which is International Women's Day. So these days and other days are obviously not recognized in the UN calendar, but I do also talk about today being Dr. Seuss Day, Dr. Seuss's birthday. National Read Across America Day is also today, with an excellent proclamation made yesterday by President Biden. So I will provide that information into the chat. And tomorrow, March 3rd, is also World Book Day, but that's only really recognized in the UK and Ireland. So again, you'll find information in the chat about World Wildlife Day and the Convention on the International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, which is, of course, as I said, this is the 50th anniversary of that. And then there's also, as I mentioned, SDG Week Canada and Earth Hour, which is related to one of our partners, GTI Enterprises, Jenny Carrington, who has created a portal for connecting entrepreneurs across industries that might not otherwise work together, with our collaborative or their collaborative model providing access to members to connect with unlikely affiliates and partners to solve structural socioeconomic problems. So their workflow accelerates innovation, access, and distribution for products, services, and events that promote personal health and well-being, social responsibility, and eco-regeneration. So again, you'll find in the chat information about the International Women's Day as well, which of course again is coming up on the 8th of March, with the UN observances happening as well in an event that will provide an opportunity to highlight the role of all digital fields in improving access to digital tools. And this will be followed by a high-level panel discussion and musical performances. Again, you'll find information about Dr. Seuss's birthday coming up, or sorry, it is today, and coming up is also National Read Across America Day, as I mentioned. There's a link to a press release by the White House by President Biden, noting that according to the Department of Education in the US, more than half of the United States adults, 54%, between 16 and 74 years of age, lack proficiency in literacy, regarding below the reading below the equivalent of a 6th grade level, where illiteracy occurs a massive economic toll on our economy and keeps not just individuals, but our entire nation from reaching our full potential. Where he noted, once a passion for reading takes hold in a young person, the benefits extend far beyond the classroom, where reading broadens our perspective, introduces us to new worlds, cultures, and languages, and cultivates our sense of empathy and understanding other people's experiences and views, where reading informs us, empowers us, teaches us the lessons of history. It helps us to make sense of the world as it is and inspires us to dream of what it could be. Joe Biden also called upon children, families, educators, librarians, public officials, and all the people of the U.S. to observe this day with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. So in a way, this IGU Summit today is also acknowledging, of course, that these are important things to also consider, even if the UN does not yet recognize these things at this point in time. In addition, it's that World Book Day or International Day of the Book, which is a charity in the UK and Ireland, which is why it's only really recognized there. However, UNESCO does recognize April 23rd as the UN World Book and Copyright Day, which is slightly different than literacy and reading. So we're still planning to have a discussion, as I noted before, primarily with Sir Bailey from youthbuildcharter.org, Michael Redler from the C4 Group, our Climate Smart Community Construction Collaborative. We hope to also talk with people like Lynn Crandall, Marcella Oliva, Isaac Sabakije about the next Earth Fest, which is also in planning. I'm hoping that they are moving forward because we have not been in discussion with them yet. I've mostly been in discussion with people like Dr. Echeverry. So we hope to also co-host the hybrid event here with UnityNet GTA, possibly at the one of the sites of York University, together with our UnityNet and PodNet partners, all of the Wikipod collaborators, where we can hopefully spark the imagination of young people, teachers, their parents, and elders who are working with our local learners at the schools here in Markham and in York Region and the Greater Toronto area, so we can empower them to take action through the Global Sister Schools program, starting with the planting of the Youth Peace Gardens. We will also hope to work in close collaboration with all the members of the UnityNet Ontario and UnityNet Canada, including possibly the co-founder of the Indigenous Global Unity Network, Mr. Michael Scher, who unfortunately I heard yesterday in some tweets, or not really tweets, but Facebook messages that he sent me. He's really seems to be a little bit unsure of whether it's a good thing that Canada's actually accepting more immigrants. He seems to be of the opinion that immigrants are somehow a bad thing for Canada, and is questioning the overall scope of our activities in supporting these refugee communities. But of course, we are supporting the refugees in Africa who are being displaced by wars and drought and other climate events, where we're hoping to empower them so they do not need to have to consider coming to countries like Canada out of desperation. So that is, I think, one of the key things that we need to ensure that in our message. It's not just about, oh, we want to ensure that Canada grows to 100 million, as some of these program developers wish to do, as Mitch Gold has pointed out recently. But it's also to ensure that we don't have a migration and refugee crisis in the years and decades moving forward. So there is also work that we're doing in close collaboration. We do want to establish a legacy education project here in the Greater Toronto Area, done in solidarity with Indigenous peoples. There is actually only one Indigenous community really here in York Region, so that makes it a little bit easier to do that partnership. We do also hope to work with Scouts Canada, Scouts Europe, hopefully with more partners like Rotary International, as they seek to implement the Indigenous Unity Badge for the young people who are participating in their programs. So where we can partner with local schools, especially the schools of the arts and the schools of architecture, in each of our own local communities across our network of networks, where we host this series of virtual and in-person charrettes, help Michael and the Scouts come up with that curriculum, hopefully over the next few months, where the curriculum would help young people to understand that every country has their own Indigenous peoples, and that we must become compassionate members of a global society of humans, and as essential part of a process of real reconciliation. So the key people we have for these projects are the members of the Unity Learning Network, along with the Global Sister Schools program, and others who may wish to contribute to these processes and these efforts. So I do as well want to mention, of course, UNDRIP Day, which is coming up, Earth Day drumming at City Halls. So this is the event where we'll do the drumming at City Halls with Indigenous peoples. This is the day we also engage with the students at local schools to start planning and building their own local youth peace gardens at their own local schools and in their communities with the community partners. So again, in the chat, you'll find this week an actual link to a live event page, which now accepts people to come in and register for that. And I've been promoting that over the past days as well. Starting on February 28th, I'm sending individual personalized messages to every person who is, I've been actually holding off on accepting invites to connect with people on LinkedIn. So I've built up probably a few hundred people that said, I want to connect with you. And instead of just immediately connecting with them and saying hello, I've been building up a list of people on LinkedIn who want to connect with me. So now when I connect with them, I send this link to please join us for these events on Saturday, April 22nd.
Excuse me, Lloyd, for one sec.
Yes.
I've admitted a few people, but none of them have come through. And I'm wondering if it's something I'm doing wrong. There was someone named Patrick with a last name I can't pronounce.
Probably Patrick Nkoma from Malawi.
Yes, that was the name. And I admitted him, but I didn't see him. He didn't come in.
Huh.
And
can you see if you can make Stephanie as a manage this as well?
How do I do that?
I don't think I have any of that ability to do anything because I don't think he made me as a co-host. So I don't know what button it is.
Well, I'm an inadequate co-host. I mean, I didn't.
No, hi, it's Stephanie here. Go click on participants.
Yes.
And it will say my name and
yes.
maybe more. Click
yes.
on that and it says make co-host.
Click on there. Make host. I'll make co-host. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's now I'm understanding the reason why we have not too many people on our call today.
Yeah. Which you can blame me, I guess.
That's
okay.
Not a big deal, right? We move forward between these meetings. So most of the work we do is actually not during these meetings, but between meetings. This is just an overview of what's going on.
And since I've interrupted, I just want to say I didn't get the calendar emailed to me.
I did send it to you, Mitch. For sure, I sent it. It may
Maybe
have
you
bounced
sent-
back or something.
Maybe you sent it through WhatsApp. If you could send it to me in an email.
No, I sent it by email for sure. I can resend it maybe if you have another email, but I'm not sure
Yeah.
if I might have the
would you-
wrong email. But we'll talk about that afterwards, Mitch. I'll get you that
Okay.
for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so our next event, again, I don't have a logo for the next event, which is UnityNet World Biodiversity Day, I mentioned as well. This we're going to be calling our Plan Your Youth Peace Garden Ceremony. So these will be in-person events on this day, which is 2 weeks ahead of the Abraham Project World Environment Day, June 5th events. So we'll bring together all of our local students and their parents and their families, get them participating in planning their Youth Peace Garden Ceremony event. So we'll go over things like logistics and who to invite, drafting an invitation letter, issuing a press release. This will be an outdoor event at one of our local public parks, hopefully with local council members, others in the community like Rotary Markham. Here in the city of Markham, we'll likely do it in Leechcraft Park, an 8-acre park with the shelters and a splash pad where we may also be able to do our Bubble Fun Festival events in August. Again, it may or may not be in that park, so this is still an ongoing conversation, again, with Dr. Echeverry, so it may end up, we do that event in Downsview Park. They also have actually a stage and an area with again a splash pad and park-like setting that families can attend in that particular location. So we'll also use this event to promote the rest of our Drawdown Markham events, including the IGU Summit events like this one today, and our networks, and get young people, schools and teachers and parents and grandparents from Markham and York Region and Greater Toronto engaged in the conversations that we're having here within UnityNet. We'll also engage with the schools and the teachers and their families in a competition and a related learning program to design your own Bubble Fun machine. So our goal will be to have a few working Bubble Fun machines by August, created by some entrepreneurial students and from some of the local high schools, and create an Eventbrite page for the World Biodiversity Day, which is this day coming up in May. So the invitation will read something like how to design and build a productive food garden that maximizes nutrition and maximizes the potential to protect and restore biodiversity within your own bioregion and watershed. So this is something that I'm working on again with Leslie from Sierra Club of Canada, who is also a biodiversity network host for the Global Unity Network. So you'll find our South Markham Community Food Security Network link, as well as Drawdown Markham and our Community Climate Action Hub, or CCAH, and the Collaborative Exchange Program links, as well as the Public Network and the Climate Smart Gardens Network, which we originally created way back when we were having originally conversations with Joan Kerr. Never got used, but I'm hoping to reactivate that node of our network. So as we move forward, the next event is the Abraham Project Tree of Peace and Reconciliation Tree Planting Ceremonies on World Environment Day, which is Monday, June 5th. So this is the day we plant our Tree of Peace and Reconciliation, and in some communities raise that Indigenous unity flag in celebration and ceremony at those youth peace gardens where the young people in the local communities established with their schools and the rest of the community members. So it's on this day where we're creating these INAB collaboratives, our local empowerment networks for the humanitarian entrepreneurs in our local communities. So the INAB collaborative cooperative entities form the backbone of our network of networks. So again, World Environment Day, you'll find that information in the chat. We don't yet have that Eventbrite page published, but I did put it in the chat earlier. And so again, coming up later in the year in August is the Internationally Coordinated Bubble Fun Festivals on International Youth Day. So this is the date we want to keep open because this is where we come back to those youth peace gardens and celebrate our diversity as localized communities of equals in our own communities, coordinated globally. So we celebrate together in a hybrid event in the local and global communities through virtual sharing. Each one of us as human beings in our local communities, where we recognize those around the world who are localizing these global goals through the development of partnerships in our local communities, where each of us helps to ensure that our own local humanitarian entrepreneurs are empowered by the members of our INAB collaboratives. So this takes place during Indigenous Indigenous Unity Weeks, which starts on International Day of Indigenous Peoples on August 9th and is taking place actually on International Youth Day, which is August 12th, and ends on World Humanitarian Day, which is August, I believe, the 16th. And so the final event that we do is during Youth Peace Weeks, from Global Cooperation Day, October 4th, until World Food Day, October 16th. So this is a series of events during the Youth Peace Weeks where we do some edutainment programs with the in-person events here in the city of Markham, in the region of York, and from across Ontario and Canada, but especially from the Rouge and Don watersheds of the Great Lakes Basin of Turtle Island, in partnership with the members of our own local communities, including the schools and the Indigenous people here in the Greater Toronto area, or the GTB, as we call it, the Greater Toronto bioregion. We'll also work with schools like York University, Seneca College, the local schools, and the teachers from the Catholic and secular school boards. We'll seek to work with our UnityNet members through Drawdown Markham and our partnerships, especially as we create our own local INAB collaboratives here in the GTA, which I mentioned as well. We are seeking to create at least 5, but as many as 25 of these local empowerment networks established from 2023 and over the next few years. But hopefully at least 3 by the end of 2023 in Markham, Vaughan, and Richmond Hill. So the INAB Collaborative Cooperative Empowerment Networks for our own local young people and humanitarian entrepreneurs who are localizing the global goals here in Markham, Greater Toronto, Ontario, Canada, in the Great Lakes Basin north of Lake Ontario, Turtle Island. So join us through our Drawdown Markham, UnityNet GTA, UnityNet Ontario, and UnityNet Canada organizations. If you're living in another part of the country, or living in another country, or on another continent like Africa or Asia, please join our UnityNet CTP program so we can coordinate our activities, partner with your own local community through each of our own local INAB collaborative teams. So again, in the chat, you'll find additional information about Global Cooperation Day, which is something that our colleague had created from New Zealand had created some time ago. You'll also find information about World Food Day on October 16th. And I do like to mention as well the Sunlight Spectacle Hybrid Edutainment event that we want to happen on October 14th, which is during our annual during this annual eclipse that will be visible from the US, starting in Oregon, going down to Texas, and then throughout Mexico and Central America, and then down into South America, ending in Brazil. So the final event that I'm hopeful that we can do this year as well is the Sunlight Spectacle 2023, following the solar eclipse that takes place October 14th, starting at around 5 a.m. in Dune City, Oregon, visible from the northeast corner of California to Rio Grande do Norte, Brazil, during the Sunlight Spectacle event. We do edutainment events, send messages of unity, peace, hope, self-reliance, sovereignty, sustainability, forgiveness, and regeneration of our planet and of our society. With the messages we send out during these events, not only about jobs and the economy, because the education and training that we're being delivered through the Unity learning infrastructure is intended to uplift people with dignity, where the process and results of the learning is all about practical reconciliation. So again, you'll find detailed information about Sunlight Spectacle 2023 in that particular clips that is happening on that day, October 14th. As always, I like to mention the 5 Points Youth Foundation, AHIABGA, where I was designated a Goodwill Ambassador for the 5 Points Youth Foundation, which is based in Los Angeles. I do have a portfolio that covers Canada, La Francophonie, the Commonwealth of Nations, and Turtle Island communities, with being a member as well of the Ad Hoc International Advisory Board of Goodwill Ambassadors and Activists. We are seeking to empower our communities to engage with royal, Indigenous, and tribal leadership, as well as helping local communities to establish these interfaith neighborhood academic and business collaboratives, the INAB collaboratives, that will come together, pledge to support all of our local humanitarian entrepreneurs who are globalizing these global goals, starting with the Sustainable Development Goals, while also seeking ways to leave no one behind. Again, we can connect with the AHIABGA in the links provided in the chat. So our primary partner, sponsor, that I always give recognition to is Andrew Networks, at the door opening network of our global Unity network of networks, which we call UnityNet. He's also hosting these Thursday Zoom calls, which were committed to take place until at least December of this year, where Andrew Networks also hosting additional events like the Youth Peace Week events and the Drawdown Markham monthly events as well. So Andrew Networks promotional support services also rebroadcast at production-ready presentations or other citizen media in the themes of globalization, re-indigenization, resilience, local implementation of the SDGs on these AHIABGA domain, redirected to a number of other social media sites, such as UCIT-TV and others. Andrew Networks is a brand and domain name owned by ParXTC Export Trading Company, comprising the social media channels TRN TV, Universal Citizens Media Networks, Conversations with Andrew Williams Jr., and many more. So Andrew Networks is our primary sponsor supporting the promotional ecosystem for this UnityNet initiative at the Indigenous Global Unity Summit events, again, that take place through December. So Andrew, I also call our Yes, Yes, Yes partner, helping to open doors so that members of our network are able to discover their inner selves and passions. So Andrew Networks works with the people who occupy the various nodes of our global Unity network, so they can come together with the people of the network, acting like a net to support the dreams of our members, so they can leverage those passions, transform their visions of a better future for themselves and their communities into a reality that makes sense for their communities and for themselves and their families, however they might define that, what that better future is collectively, as they seek to work together in partnership and leave no one behind. So again, links to Andrew Network can be found in the chat, along with direct links to connect with Andrew Williams Jr. As well, who has been our steadfast partner for all of these years. So the INAB collaboratives that we are establishing at the local level, where we're leveraging our process of community engagement. So the engagement done through the Trees of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting and the flag raising ceremonies, but not only. These are also the community engagement that follows each year afterwards, the Bubble Fun Festivals and sports and dancing and arts, done in collaboration with the INAB collaborative members. The CTP program for twinning these communities and the community organized tree plantings, and the regenerative community infrastructure development projects and these other events that we do, like the drumming ceremonies. So we also have the Tea Diplomacy Initiative, which includes not just the virtual, but also the in-person community conversations on topics of peace, regeneration, reconciliation, and forgiveness. That's something we do also need to develop in partnership with our colleagues in the UK. So there's also the Dream Board Initiative done in collaboration with the C4 group, which I think is also extremely important, along with identification of and engagement with local talents, artists and creative people in the orange economy for the purpose of promoting and showcasing their talent, and especially as they promote their art and the globalization of the global goals, and of course, achievement of a productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. especially during any one of our sunlight spectacle events, as I mentioned, these edutainment events done throughout the year. So if there's any other programs that we want to do within the context of the Climate Smart Gardens or forests with our partner FBSC in Oshawa, the Climate Smart Kitchens by Kindred Kitchens in Toronto, the Wheel of Life Farms by EPWT in Vietnam, the CSAP centers or Spark Learning Centers, which we also call Climate Smart Learning Centers with the PodNet partners. So we're hoping to move forward on all of them at some point and create a peace center, which essentially means bringing all 5 of these open source regenerative climate smart infrastructure program or solutions together in a single co-located park. So again, it's putting some additional information in the chat on all of these programs that we are doing. I do try to update these links each week. I try to spend at least an hour or so going through here and putting in the relevant updates. Some of it might be the same, and working on these calls, we'll have seen them, but I do want to put them in each time. So this I actually also just sent to Dr. Jose Echeverry as well, as I had come together to create this graphic in January and present this as a possible way to bring forward so many partners in our communities. So this is kind of the basis of the main 7 sectors, not of course including the Indigenous communities yet on this particular graphic, but to show that our partnership may involve many organizations existing within our community. So this is what we are calling the Values-Driven Digital and Community Transformation Network. So we do 2 main things here. Of course, we focus on creating community partnerships for the purpose of facilitating the creation of the community-based cooperative humanitarian enterprise teams, consisting of the young people and the families in our local communities worldwide who are seeking to implement local regenerative solutions for achieving these global goals. And the second, we're helping to facilitate the local establishment of regenerative community Unity Garden learning hub spaces in all of our local communities. So the Unity Garden and Unity Hub spaces are places for educating and training young people and families in all of these local communities to help become localized, regenerative, climate smart, humanitarian food producer entrepreneurs who will be delivering local solutions for food and climate and peace and social justice, using the latest in controlled environment regenerative production solutions. It can be integrated into any type of communities, whether urban, suburban, or rural, along with leveraging a number of different digitally integrated social and business tools that facilitate both collaboration within local communities as well as globally, along with facilitating local income generation for the local community members of our network so they can become more resilient and begin to adapt to the changing global climate that is also affecting our own local watersheds' ability to produce abundance from our own local productive resources, including healthy soils, clean water, and renewable energy. Now, I'd like to get into nitty-gritty a little bit of what we're planning to do here in each local community as we establish these local global UnityNet INET collaboratives. So I'll use the example of the city of Markham visit as an overview of the structure of the UnityNet network of networks INET collaboratives, where the UnityNet partnership model is based on developing these partnerships across those 7 major sectors of the local communities, where 8 partners are identified in total, where we include the local Indigenous communities, which may have their own set of partners to bring in across these 7 sectors. So we may even end up with 14 different partners of these from the Indigenous communities plus from the settler communities. So the international exchanges will be led by the schools, the universities, the college, the school boards, working as a partnership between the educators via our Global Sister Schools program, but not only that one. So the types of exchanges we'd like to do can include between, for instance, healthcare practitioners or emergency managers like paramedics or fire or security or police, all of which are part of this public sector and governance, as you see with the logo of the city of Markham, along with various others as necessary as per local consideration and needs, including partners in other sectors like business, interfaith, civil society, finance, orange economy, within both the settler and the Indigenous communities worldwide, as per local development pathways and institutions available in those local communities. So the model we have is called an Interfaith Neighborhood Academic and Business Collaborative. It's based on a HEPTA matrix partnership model developed by Drawdown Markham, where each local INAB collaborative comes together as a cooperative and a member of the Global Partnership for Regenerative Development to empower their local humanitarian entrepreneurs who are delivering these local solutions for achieving a localized, productive, compassionate, collaborative, regenerative economy that leaves no one behind. I give an example of this HEPTA matrix partnership, which could be created in the city of Markham, here in the York Region, Greater Toronto, based on the existing local institutions. So the following partners, like City of Markham as a governance partner, the Markham Board of Trade as the business partner, the York Region District Catholic School Boards, York University, Seneca College, which have their campuses here in York Region, both, as I said, just down the road from where I am, is the Seneca College, and a little bit further down the road is the new York University campus. So we want these academic partnerships, not to exclude, of course, the public and private schools and any other schools and organizations that do education and training in the city of Markham, which could include other non-governmental organizations that are doing work delivering programs that could support as well regenerative development as we move forward here in Toronto, like the Toronto Region Conservation Authority and their partners at the Parks Canada, which of course has Rouge National Urban Park, so where they deliver education about nature and education about our local watersheds, where they bring in local young naturalists and organizations like the naturalist groups. So we have also the Markham Interchurch Committee for Affordable Housing as an example of interfaith partners. There's likely going to be many others. We have Rotary Club of Markham Sunrise. There's a couple of Rotary clubs here in Markham, including Markham Unionville, and the Lions Club and the YMCA and Scouts Canada and the Air Cadet Service of Canada, all being examples of civil society partners, where we expect that our primary partner, though, will be Rotary International, because Rotary is, again, a global organization with Rotary clubs around the world. But we're hoping to partner with Rotary Ontario, District 770, which actually includes 55 Rotary clubs in Southern Ontario and has nearly 2,000 members. So again, we hope that some of these credit unions like PACE or Meridian will also work with us, potentially including the big 5 banks, which have, of course, major offices in Markham. So become our finance partners of the INAB Collaborative. Also join our UnityNet finance network, beginning to deploy the regenerative financing systems throughout our network in communities that have established their own local INAB Collaborative cooperatives. So that could be our primary way of financing, which would flow down to the local community organizations that are establishing these cooperative enterprises and implementing the regenerative infrastructure and executing the UnityNet community engagement events and the interventions. And finally, the Markham Arts Council is an example of the orange economy partner of the HEPTA Matrix partnership model. This is not the end, of course, because as I mentioned, we could have at least as many partners from the local Indigenous communities, which includes the same 5 or 6 nations that we state in our land acknowledgement. So the representation could come from the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Wendat, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe peoples. So the partnership with Indigenous peoples is represented on this page by the heart at the center of the partnership network. in this matrix. So the critical aid partner of the INAB collaboratives, the stewards of Mother Earth that are critical to the future of human survival and for at least the next 7 generations into the future. So again, in the chat, you'll find some links to those relevant organizations, including, for instance, YMCA of Canada, which has, again, its headquarters at the new IBM campus, where we're hoping to also work with IBM to help develop an open source version of our Interchange for Peace, VCN, with whatever partners they may be able to bring on board, which of course, York University is also partnered very closely with IBM to do these projects. So I do want to mention again, the INAB Collaborative as a cooperative. We do bring all of the partners together during these tree planting and flag raising ceremonies, along with the local community ceremonies and activities we do. We formally commemorate and celebrate the establishment of the Youth Peace Gardens on any one of the dates that have been planned in our UnityNet Living Room calendar. We also ask all of these organizations and institutions that have been invited to these events to participate and form and join a local INAB cooperative business organization. So the mandate of the INAB collaboratives is simple. Do your best to empower any and all local female and feminist humanitarian entrepreneurs, ensure they succeed in their local cooperative enterprise, starting with the establishment of the local community Unity Garden Learning Centers or the Community Hub or Peace Center, which will deliver the various goods and services, including local regenerative climate smart foods and the learning programs. So we want to ensure that we can implement solutions and achieve the global goals locally, but starting with those SDGs in ways that leave no one behind. So what's shown on the screen is just an example of the INAB Collaborative Cooperative Empowerment Network for what is known as the City of Markham, New York Region, Greater Toronto Area, or GTP, in the Great Lakes watershed north of Lake Ontario, Canada. But we are, as mentioned, hoping to create as many as 25 municipalities, 25 INAB collaboratives in the GTA, and extend those as well to the Greater Toronto bioregion. Each one can have an INAB collaborative. Right now, we have a placeholder for Markham and Mississauga. I'd like to aim to have at least 5 by the end of 2023, as shown on this page, with the others most likely established in the cities of Vaughan, where Stephanie is, as well as Richmond Hill, just across the street from me. City of Toronto may actually have a number of local INAB collaboratives, possibly coinciding with the 4 major watersheds of the city. So the Humber River in the west, Mimico and the Etobicoke rivers, and those watersheds. The Don River watershed, I think, is where I am. Not think where I am, but I think is the largest. You can see on the map in the bottom corner, the Don River watershed really is very much dominating the center of Toronto and its downtown areas. So there's the Highland and Rouge River watersheds in the east. Of course, Rouge National Park is there. There's part of Petticoat Creek River watershed as well. And there are 20 more municipalities and 20 possible INAB collaboratives that we can create here in York Region and the Greater Toronto area. So my hope and wish is that every one of the 9 municipalities of York Region, starting, of course, with Markham, Vaughan, and Richmond Hill, will have their own INAB collaborative, but also Newmarket, Aurora, East Gwillimbury, Georgina, King, and Witchard, Stouffville. So again, in the chat, you'll find a link to the Greater Toronto area, which of course is the beginning of our work also in the Greater Toronto bioregion. So I think at this point, like to sort of pause and see if we have our guest speaker on. It looks like we have Awo on with us today, but that we have a few other people besides our core team with Stephanie. Mitch, thank you again for coming on, and welcome, Awo. It looks like we are not somehow able to go forward with the guest speaker. Again, today is Mark Diazye. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Probably not. Who's coming from the Kakuma refugee camp. He seemed to be quite excited yesterday, but you never know about these things. Sometimes they are unable to get that connection properly established from these refugee camps in rural Kenya, I believe, which is in the north of Kenya. So I don't know what the circumstances are at this point and why we do not have our guest speaker on with us, but I can open it up. Glad to see Samson on the call actually today. Hoping to move forward in conversations with Samson, who's I think a key member as well in Kenya. Will help us to also connect with people like Sir Bailey, who are moving forward in Los Angeles with the 5 Points Youth Foundation, so we can create these global networks of these INAP collaboratives, and as well the Unity Gardens as a network in both Bermuda at the crossroads of the Atlantic, and possibly also in Hawaii at the crossroads of the Pacific with our guest Stephanie and her Maui Aloha project, which of course it intends to establish a network of eco-villages under the Unity Eco-Village Network, starting with one possibly in the greater Ottawa Valley. Not sure, sorry about Stephanie that I wasn't able to join you on the map call on Monday. It's just, I was a little bit busy with other things. Of course, we're starting to move forward here, so my days are getting more full than they ever have been. So we're now.
Yes, no problem, no problem. It was a good meeting. And we have new people every week joining because they want to live in this way. They want to live in community, or participate in learning and well-being centers.
Yeah, because they should be in our cities too. They don't necessarily need to be rural.
You know, people even want to live in the urban centers in, you know, co-housing kind of ways as well, but more communally and more sustainably and more responsibly. So it's amazing how many, you know, people are coming. It's mostly word of mouth. You know, we're in conscious communities trying to be, you know, responsible, self-sufficient in regenerative ways, and loving and caring communities rather than, you know, competitive communities, cooperative, you know.
Yes, so there is definitely a paradigm shift. And I again, I've had this conversation as well with Leslie Adams from the Sierra Club this week, and really, the basis I think for this concept of the eco village is not necessarily the same thing that sort of took place in the 1970s, right, where there was sort of the back to the land movement, where everybody was trying to become self-sufficient by farming and doing whatever they could off grid and whatever. So that was the original sort of eco village movement that happened, and even my own mother and family was involved in some of those original initiatives back in the 1970s, like and so there were people in my family that were members of these original back to landers back out in Eastern Ontario, but they didn't really make good of it because the issue around food security and the amount of work that needs to be done to achieve that for a community. So this is where we're hoping that a lot of this new infrastructure, the automation that can be added to these pod buildings, those zero energy buildings that can be where we can now produce food in these aquaponic systems that are perhaps 10 to 100 times more productive than a conventional farm. where we can now use our own waste. We know how to recycle our own waste back into productive food systems, and we now know how to automate these systems, how to produce zero energy buildings. We need to now demonstrate them, show that these communities can feed themselves with the waste that's produced by their own communities, whether they're including animals or not. Our own human wastes are a resource, and we need to learn to get over that ick factor and really create systems. I mean, now with the research that's being done for Mars travel, obviously, a traveler to Mars needs to recycle 100% of their waste, with zero waste, basically, in a rocket ship going to Mars, right? They have to recycle 100%, 100.000% of their waste back into their own food that they're going to be eating, their own waste over and over and over and over and over again, right? So there's no other choice if you're going to a planet like Mars. So these programs have been underway at places like Guelph University to study how do we produce food on a spaceship and feed these astronauts, because they're not going to store tons and tons and tons and tons of food on these rocket ships to send to Mars, because they need them as light as possible. So they gotta grow their own food in zero weightless environment, like zero gravity environments, using the waste of the astronauts.
But you're absolutely right, Lloyd, that this is the difference of this time right now for the paradigm shift. We have the science, we have the indigenous wisdoms, we have new ways of doing things to function as a society without only being takers, of our resources. We know how to do things in regenerative ways now, in such smart ways, in ways that we won't have to work as hard as a humanity either, because we have these systems and we'll be able to also.
And the automation, right? That's really key as well, is that once we're in a productive society where we have buildings that produce their own food, what do people do? Well, they're gonna be bored at home and doing nothing because everything's automated. So okay, now what do? We do art, we do dancing, we learn things, we learn culture, we learn history. We go out into our communities and we restore nature.
Yeah, well, absolutely, and we'll have more time for play. We'll have more time for well-being, individual and communal well-being, and especially
more
after
time
this
for
time
yoga, more time for all of these activities.
Well, yeah, and especially after this time of COVID, we saw how sacred it is to have community endeavors, and there's a loneliness crisis worldwide now. It's for that reason and for many other reasons.
We are social creatures, and we have to acknowledge that social aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
And like you said, during the pandemic, we really, really realized that, oh my God,
it's paramount to our well-being, as you say. We're social.
Just gonna destroy our mental well-being. So getting back into nature, that's actually a critical part of the programs we're going to work with Dr. Jose Echeverry and York University to really bring young people back into nature. And so that is a key part of what we're trying to do. And that's why we want our ceremonies to be outdoors when we do them. So yes, as great as the virtual events are, these Unity gardens and literally building gardens and forests and farms that can showcase these solutions is what we really need to do to get that hands-on, hands in the dirt, hands with the animals, hands with nature, understanding bugs and understanding those creepy crawly things that so many people grew up thinking, ew, yick, I don't want to touch that, right? Establishing that link to our own watersheds and understanding what lives here. What lives here and how does it thrive too? What is its habitat? Can we restore that habitat so they can thrive in that watershed as it exists today, and into the future as the climate changes? what do we need to do to change that habitat to ensure those species survive or reintroduced back into those watersheds if they happen to be previously extirpated. So there are long conversations over the next few generations that we're going to need to have.
A thought, Lloyd. I'm not sure if I heard you mention World Water Day on March 22nd. Maybe you did say it, but I think I didn't hear it.
I believe. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let me just go check my notes. World Water Day, March 22nd. If I haven't added it to the calendar, I will definitely do so. Water Day. Yeah, no, I didn't. You're right. I didn't add it.
Well, I would like.
Was it in the calendar? Did you remember saying? I'm going to go back to the presentation.
I didn't see it. That's why I'm mentioning it. And I sort of noticed that because that's one of my claims to fame is that I wrote a letter to Noel Brown, endorsed by the one of the charities in England, and in the within the next year, which was the next year was.
What did you say it is? March
22nd.
22nd. Okay, I'm going to definitely be adding this to the calendar. So March 22nd. So we do of course have Earth Hour on March 25th, and the drumming ceremonies. Is there anything you might suggest that we might want to do on March 22nd?
Well,
I'm looking at my calendar now.
I think one of the key things with water is the plastic that is in the water.
Yeah,
it's now down to like nano size, but it's there.
it's still endocrine disruptors.
It's something that has to be acknowledged and taken out of water.
Somehow.
I'm sure the guys. Well, that's where I think a graphene filter would do that.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly where we absolutely should
But I
do
don't
research
know
on that. I'm not sure who's doing that though.
I don't know that a graphene filter will be cost effective in doing that. But
Well,
it's
not for the entire ocean, probably.
well, if a graphene filter can be brought down to a.
But the Brita filter, for instance.
No, Brita doesn't use graphene.
No, but I'm saying, but that size, like an individual for a home, for a business, for a community. Maybe not. I don't know if at the level of the community filtration plant, water filtration plant, but at least if it could be developed at a smaller scale, it could be done for an individual home.
Well, yes, I think so, but I think the job should be done at the macro rather than the micro because it'll take too long. It'll take too long.
Well, and it's again the scale, right? It becomes a lot cheaper to be doing it for entire community, or like a city like Toronto, right? At the water filtration plant than to do millions of individual homes. Right.
I also wanted to just comment on an article I read. I didn't read it. I read it today. That the United Nations has changed its request to the global community. It was asking for $1 trillion a year, and they just reduced it to 500 billion. And I thought that was noteworthy because the UNFCCC was being told to look to administer $1 trillion a year. And so we have these people looking to administer $1 trillion. And now they're only, well, if they get it, they're only going to get half of 500 billion, half a trillion. So these are things that we in the work that we're doing we tend to ignore the larger financial picture that the world struggles with every day. And that's unfortunate because like we don't really discuss a new capitalism. We don't really discuss it, yet we're living in a capitalistic world, although we might like to prefer to live in a more socialized world, which is why we do social growth programs.
Well, I mean, Canada, I think is not is a little is sort of an example of we have a much larger safety net, social safety net than countries like the U.S.
Oh yeah, ask the indigenous people in North Bay.
Not talking about indigenous peoples, but
well, you have to because
no, well, you have to. We know we have to, but I'm just saying that
no,
under compared to in the U.S.
Well, UNDRIP is not even murmured by any of the U.S. pundits. They in fact, they don't talk much about the UN at all.
Oh, because they're really not it's not something they got so poisoned during the Trump administration that they just they talk about woke issues and all this garbage.
Well, we don't know what Trump destroyed at the UN during his tenure. We don't know about it because Nikki Haley, who was there, doesn't talk about it. And so we have, from an American point of view, we are really, really in the dark as to their relationship with the rest of the world. They are content to sit back and not send planes to stop Russia. I mean, to me, that's an absurd concept.
Because Russia's waving the nuclear
no,
option,
they're not. Right? No, they're using the words. They're not.
No, of course, but it's a tactic that they use, and
well,
Biden doesn't want to get that.
It's a bluff. It's a bluff.
Yeah, of course it is, but
okay, so if it's a bluff,
but Biden still doesn't want to call that bluff.
Well,
but this is all political stuff, and we don't talk political stuff too much on this show. We talk about solutions, not about what are the problems.
Well, look at all the energy being wasted right now in Ukraine. You got every building, every bomb that goes off knocks down a building that has to be rebuilt. We got enough problems about building up the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And we don't know enough even to do it. Like the notion of graphene and cement, it's just, like they're doing it, it's happening, but no one knows about it. Graphene is being added to cement and paints right now. Graphene is being used in batteries right now. Graphene is being used in your cell phone right now. But there's all this knowledge about graphene that we don't know anything about. And
because it's under intellectual property rights that are developed by the corporations.
Well, no, it's actually published by a company called Metalgrass in Israel. Metalgrass publishes up-to-date information on what's happening in the graphene industry, overviewed, not really stuff that we can grasp ourselves. I mean, we can grasp it, but we can't see it.
We're not the experts.
Well, who are the experts if not us?
The people that are getting trained in that.
Who's training people in it?
Well, I don't know, but it's probably some institution in Israel.
Yeah, I would like to think so, but I don't know. I really don't know.
If somebody's willing to do a deep dive and to find out who's learning about and teaching about graphene and its uses at the various institutions like universities, colleges, or whatever, globally, that's something that somebody could do. And maybe Mitch, you could do that, but I
No,
don't
no,
really have that time either.
No, it's something that would be well served. And it may even be a sub-project to the main project. And the main project that I'm doing with graphene, and I think I have someone in Mexico to do it. We are looking at collating all the existing patents on graphene and looking at the applications of those patents. And we're talking about over 20,000 patents. And that's the last time I checked out, the number was 3 years ago, was 20,000. And I think it's growing at 5,000 patents a year, I think. So it's probably closer to 35,000 patents, which we know nothing about. We might do some research and come up with 10 patents are being used. But compared to what we need to know, because it's going to change the way we think about filtration. It's going to air filtration, water filtration, probably information filtration. How we, but graphene, well, that's what AI will do.
Yeah, well, the new generation of electronics built on those probably same materials, right?
I guess as I say, I'm only aware of. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I took my electronics engineering technology courses back in the 1990s, so a little bit out of date on the latest stuff, if they're actually using graphene or not. But more than likely they are. I remember reading articles, even like early research back in the 90s about using these other materials besides just silicon, because silicon is actually a relatively slow material compared with carbon in terms of electron transfer rates, and also the ability to cool itself and transfer heat. That's why they have all the electronics have heat sinks and fans right in your computer, because the silicon just doesn't dissipate heat well enough. But graphene and carbon, oh boy, it just releases that heat really, really quickly. So you don't need those fans and stuff, and you can run the chips at much higher speeds without getting so hot and potentially melting themselves.
Right.
So yeah, lots of applications, but again, a lot of this is proprietary, maybe done in patents, but eventually those patents, like all of things, will expire, which is another reason why we're really focused on those solar roof pod buildings right now, because the patents are just about to expire this year, I believe. So everything will just basically become open. So all those patents that Richard Nelson has claimed are on the open source. Well, they're going open source anyway, regardless, because all the patents are running out. But it's not really about the patents. It's about the network, and it's about the knowledge on how to actually do it in reality. And like looking at a patent won't tell you how. It'll only tell you what. But the how is the big part, and the hands-on. So anyway, I'm looking at the time. It is 12:40. We've been on since 11, so this is actually a fairly long session today. Once again, thank you, Awo, Asonye, and Samson. If you'd like to introduce yourselves as well and tell us what you are doing, where you are, and the organizations you're involved with, that would be great as well. Either one, or Stephanie, if you'd like to maybe do, let's see if we can wrap up today and close up our session with a final few words from Stephanie, if she'd like to say something, if she's available.
Yes, hi. Yeah, well, we do live in a time, as you said, That's the difference between now and 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, is that we can put these systems together in much different ways. We have much more advanced knowledges and sciences and digital AI on it, to infinity and beyond. We even have space tourism. So, we're in a time where we can put the systems together to really affect change in the world, regarding food security, housing security. I'm Stephanie Schuler. We're predominantly in Toronto, Canada, with UnityNet International, trying to build this network to showcase all of the amazing knowledges that are happening, but very isolated, to put it into a coordinated network. And I'm from Maui Aloha Project, a global living, learning, and well-being eco-village initiative to co-creation, trying to come up with ways that are different to live together in community, and to, our primary value is the well-being of each other. And to be able to learn and engage and outdoors as a center precept of who we are, to really engage and interact in nature and in natural environments. So grateful. Thank you, Lloyd, for running the summit. And it's important that we engage with the Indigenous wisdoms of all regions and of all cultures, and that we celebrate all identities and have inclusive communities that really include each other as one humankind. That's one, as one being, one of the, as one, in peace with each other. And if we have enough food, and if we have enough shelter, and if we have enough safety, the world could live as one.
Mm-hmm. That actually reminds me of a classic song by John Lennon, which I think most people probably know. But this is actually part of what we were originally talking about way back in 2020, is how do we create something that can help, especially to leapfrog continent like Africa into the 21st century, and using these fourth industrial revolution tools to really get them to lead the way as well, using this philosophy of Ubuntu, which comes from the African continent, and saying, look, how do we create something that empowers everybody, ensuring that nobody is left behind? Because I think it would really be devastating to our individual psyches if we were to witness millions of people dying because of the
It's happening right now, Lloyd. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, but it is very much hidden from view. But I think that we need to do
20,000 people a day die of preventable causes.
Mm-hmm. No, but I'm talking about the potential that there could be millions.
Well, 20,000 a day sort of adds up.
Yeah, of course. But I'm talking about the potential collapse of civilization. We don't want as Bill Sosinski said early on when I joined Energym University. He says, "Do we think of the two movies, Mad Max and Star Trek? Do we want Mad Max or do we want Star Trek? It's a choice we have to make right now."
Well, we don't have a choice.
We do have a choice.
Well,
that's the point. We have a choice.
The only way I see us having a choice is if we can find the UN resident coordinators in every country and change the way the countries are behaving. If we don't change the way the countries are behaving, and we don't mobilize a newly trained UN resident coordinator, the die is cast. It's flowing, and they just cut us from $1 trillion to half a trillion. in the last 24 hours. You know, pardon me, but that may or not be a reality. But we do look to the Secretary General of the UN to do something, but he's asleep. You know, so
well, this is part of the reason why we do not rely on the UN. We rely on ourselves and our local communities. We do what we can where we are, and
right.
it's going to come down to individual communities.
Well,
now,
if we have the attention of Rotary International,
we
and
do.
I question, and I question that, because I've worked with the Rotary International when we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the United Nations in what was it?
But Rotary is not, again, not a top-down organization. They are an international NGO that has individual chapters, and all those individual chapters need to individually collaborate with each other. And so it's a requirement to create this network that we're creating so that they have the tools to collaborate between each other individually at the local level.
But
if they don't have that tool, they don't collaborate.
They have the tools, but they don't have the structure. They have a hierarchical structure where information goes through a process of distillation. I interviewed my donation to the 50th anniversary was an interview with 25 thought leaders in the world, 10 of whom came from Rotary International. And notwithstanding they had a dominant place in my production, and I can't say it was a great production, but it was a good production. We donated it to the city of, I forget the city, San Francisco. I'm sorry, it was San Francisco, because we were there. We walked across the bridge in San Francisco. I was with 20 indigenous people, and we were carrying the Tree of Peace across the bridge on the 50th anniversary of the United Nations. And the United Nations with the global indigenous community is highly suspect, highly suspect. Their special rapporteurs are myopic looking trained monkeys. That's
again, Mitch, this is why we're coming from the grassroots. We're not going from the top down. We're not even intending to reform the UN. That's not our purpose.
Well, it's my purpose.
Yes, we know that's your purpose, Mitch, which is why we want to work with you. Because if you happen to be successul in what you're doing, it will make us even more successful, I think, in what we're doing.
Of course.
So let's work together. Let's continue to have these dialogues. Again, it is 12:50 now. We're approaching 2 hours. I'd like to maybe end the call today. If anybody else has any final words.
Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Is that the only word you know in Spanish, Mitch?
Un cerveza, por favor.
Cerveza. Oh my God. All right. Okay. So thank you all for coming on today, and we'll continue this.
Oh, one last comment. If you can still hear me. Why Accounting is Not Boring has been published again 45 years later. It's available on Barnes & Noble, Archway, and Amazon.
What you should do, Mitch, if you come on these calls, is of course you should provide a link and provide it in the chat.
I'll do that soon. I'm not in a rush to sell it. I have to get the website up and all the other stuff with it.
Yeah. But when you have that, make sure it's on here. So we'll promote that as well.
Okay,
we should bring you on as a guest speaker as well in a future session once you're ready with that book and you want to promote it.
Well, the blank book, it's a blank book, by the way.
Is this the same? It's the same.
It's exactly the same as the one I produced in 1975
Okay.
with one additional paragraph that mentions something that I might get sued over if anyone at Second City understands what I'm claiming. I'm claiming to have founded Second City, Toronto. And it was just sold for $50 million.
Lovely.
And I'm claiming to own it.
Okay. Thank you all.
Okay.
And we'll see you
Thanks,
next week.
Lloyd. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
God bless.